From the News Channel 5 Network, this is SportsLine.
All right, everybody, welcome to SportsLine. Yours truly, John Burton, with you for the next hour. Got a lot to get to this hour. Your phone calls are welcome, of course, 737-7767. If you know me and you know this show, I've been doing the Wednesday extravaganza for about 4 years now going on. And this is my favorite show of the year. It's our WrestleMania, pre-WrestleMania spectacular. We're going to have our good buddy Justin LaBar, who joins us every year right before WrestleMania. He's a pro wrestling writer and producer. He's going to tell us everything going on that you can expect this weekend at the show of shows, WrestleMania 32, coming up in Jerry World, AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. That comes your way this Sunday. Incredible weekend coming up. The Final Four, of course, on Saturday, and then WrestleMania on Sunday, championship game Monday. And, of course, surrounding all that is the opening of the Major League Baseball season. And, of course, the Masters coming up next week. So a lot going on. And so it's an exciting time of year for sports fans and fans of sports entertainment. We're going to get right to our first guest. She is from the Associated Press, good friend of the program. Teresa Walker joins us on the line. Teresa, good evening. Great to have you on.
My pleasure, John. Always a pleasure to join you, sir.
I appreciate that. Well, so much going on. Let's get right to it. Let's talk about what's going on with the Vanderbilt men's basketball situation. Kevin Stallings now gone on his way to Pittsburgh. A pretty convenient situation for AD David Williams, isn't it? The fact that he didn't have to fire Stallings. Nate Turner, who headed the search committee for Pitt, swoops in. Probably told David Williams, look, don't fire him. We'll buy him out. Everybody looks good. I think it's pretty obvious that Williams didn't want Stallings anymore and Stallings didn't want to be here anymore based a lot on what we saw this season.
Well, and based on what kind of Kevin said after the loss at to Wichita State in the tournament, he wasn't in control of whether he was back, and what he was in control of was figuring out his next destination. And hey, it's one of those things that after 17 seasons, having a coach stay that long is just rare. I think Andy Kennedy at Ole Miss now is the dean of SEC coaches with 10 seasons. So to do 17 at one place is very rare, as David Williams pointed out these days. And, this way, he gets a new job. You can say, hey, really congratulations, we're happy for you. And now they can go and look for somebody to David Williams made it very clear on Monday he wants this program to be a regular in the NCAA tournament. So the SEC's trying to improve its men's basketball profile. Well, getting a good coach in here, to take over the Vanderbilt Commodores, that's a program that, let's face it, football, really tough to compete in basketball, especially in the SEC, especially with the resources that Vanderbilt has. So, that puts some pressure on. Now they've got to get a good coach.
One of the things that struck me kind of funny about Stallings was even before the Wichita State game, Teresa, was before the Tennessee game in the SEC tournament, of course, a game that they ended up losing. When Stallings was asked about his team's mindset heading into the postseason, he said, I don't know what their mindset is, and I've stopped caring. I mean, while we admire his honesty and his glibness and his candor, you kind of have to care a little bit, don't you? Didn't that kind of indicate a couple of things? Number one, I'm kind of sick of these guys and I'm coaching right now. And number two, I pretty much already have one foot out the door.
Well, that, and then mix that with, on the NCAA tournament selection show, he's in his office by himself. Shouldn't you be watching? I know it was a long, long show, and a lot of people tuned out on it, but shouldn't you be there with your team to find out if you are indeed in the tournament or not? So, it's nice that the team kind of cheered and he could hear that, but, there have been a lot of people who may, looked at that and seen that maybe as a fracture between Kevin and his squad. So, it just ended up being a very, very good thing. David didn't have to fire Kevin. They didn't have to worry about, buyout, things like that, at least from the Vanderbilt side, and that saves them the money that, they can now put into this next search. And, it's interesting. They've got Eddie Fogler giving them a hand. Eddie, he helped TSU get a really good coach in John Cooper, and he knows this program inside and out, having been, a former coach. In fact, my first season on the beat was when Eddie took the Commodores to the regular season SEC title and to a Sweet 16. So he knows what he's doing. Now, can they get that right guy? And, who is it going to be? That, going to the Final Four this weekend, you got to think there's going to be a lot of interviews done, a lot of talking, and a chance to maybe by Monday, Tuesday, have a new coach. Very curious to see how quickly they move on this.
Our good friend Teresa Walker joins us from the Associated Press here on SportsLine. Is there a name out there, perhaps, Teresa, that makes sense to you as the next coach at Vanderbilt?
Well, there's a lot of names that could fit. I mean, can you get Greg Marshall to leave Wichita State? I know there's a ton of money that supports out there. For all the money that Vanderbilt has with their $4.1 billion endowment, well, guess what? Wichita State has the Koch brothers. So if it's a matter of money, that shouldn't be a problem. But, you lose Van Vliet, you lose Baker, the guards that helped him get to a Final Four. Is it maybe time to look at a different pasture? Vanderbilt might not be the job he was thinking of beforehand, but guess what? Sometimes you take the opportunities that are there, and Vanderbilt's a location that you can do an awful lot with, a wonderful gym and memorial. But, Archie Miller,
yeah.
Dayton. He could be a guy, if you can convince him maybe to think about leaving Dayton, that would be a great thing. And he's brought Dayton here a couple times to play, so he certainly knows that gym pretty well. Will Wade at VCU, he's off the market with his extension, but, do you end up thinking maybe Matt McCall at Chattanooga? Only 1 year there, but did really well in the Southern Conference, got him to the tournament, and he's a, Billy Donovan assistant. But here's the thing, David Williams said there was over 100 names that he'd already heard on Monday.
Yeah.
Got to think that the list is a lot shorter than that.
Let's hope so.
But
this could take a while then.
Exactly. So it may end up being somebody that we're not expecting whatsoever. I mean, there were reports yesterday by Gary Parrish that maybe Jeff Capel, former coach at Oklahoma, and a Duke assistant right now, that maybe he gets onto the mix at Vanderbilt. He's already in the mix for Georgia Tech. So how quickly they move, I'll say this: Eddie Fogler's got that North Carolina background. Can he really talk that closely to a Dookie? So we'll see.
Interesting. Teresa, what are your thoughts on the Final Four coming up this weekend? Obviously, being a Central New York native, I'm really happy to see the Orange in there, the first 10 seed ever to make the Final Four. Oklahoma, 2 seed. A lot of people thought that they were seeded a little bit too high, but there they are. Villanova, Jay Wright finally gets over the hump and gets his team back to the Final Four. And, of course, North Carolina, the team most thought would take this thing in the end. Do you think Syracuse has a chance to upset the Tar Heels?
They have a chance. I mean, they certainly know them very, very well being in the ACC, but North Carolina is looking pretty strong. It's going to be very interesting to see what they do in that game. Keep your eye on Villanova. I got to cover them in the Sweet 16 last week at Louisville, and, their win over Kansas is really impressive. But before that game, they were shooting 53% from three.
Wow.
For the first 3 games in the tournament, and they've been shooting 58, 59, and 60+% in the first 3 games. So they're really, really shooting well, and they obviously showed against Kansas they know how to defend. So, Archie Diacono, the senior guard, just keep an eye on Nova.
All right. Well, I'm going to put you on the spot here, T. Who do you have playing for all the marbles on Monday, and who cuts down the nets on Monday night?
I'm going to go Villanova, North Carolina, and I'm going to go with Villanova.
Whoa!
Something they haven't done since '85.
Yeah. Wow. All right. Well, let's write this down. All right. Teresa likes Villanova to upset North Carolina in the championship game. Let's switch gears and talk about the Tennessee Titans, if we can. Less than a month away from draft day. I am in the camp that says the Titans should stay at 1 and take Laramie Tunsil. I know a lot of people would like to see Jalen Ramsey, the local kid, come in here, maybe have the Titans trade down, figuring that you can always get an offensive lineman later on in the draft. But I just think when you have a guy like Tunsil, he has all the measurables. And when you have John Robinson, the GM, and Mike Mularkey, the head coach, both saying our number one priority this offseason is to protect our franchise quarterback, Marcus Mariota, I think Tunsil's the guy. I say stay at 1, take Tunsil. What say you?
Well, you can't go wrong there, and let's not forget that the controlling owner, Amy Armstrong, has made it very, very clear she wants Marcus Mariota protected, and he missed 4 games last season. Why? Because he got hit and hurt in the pocket. Mm-hmm. So, you can't go wrong if you're protecting his blind side. And, the only thing that looks bad is, well, that would be the 3rd time in 4 years that they've drafted a lineman there in the first round. But if it works, then guess what? You've got linemen there. Your offensive line is pretty well stacked, especially with adding Ben Jones at center in the free agency. Your quarterback should be protected for at least 10 years. And if you can do that, then guess what? You've got Dick LeBeau working over there on the defensive side of the ball. There's some good safeties. There's a good safety crop this year. So, and they brought in Rashad Johnson, the Alabama guy who was ecstatic to be so much closer to home. It's going to be very interesting to see. But you can't go wrong. The only thing that makes it good is if you can get a good deal, could you maybe get Jalen Ramsey and then trade back up into that and get a Ronnie Stanley or somebody like that to take over at left tackle. They do have some options, but again, it'll all depend on how many people and what the bidding is like. And
right.
John Robinson said he wants a king's ransom. Well, to do that, you got to have somebody willing to do it, and they are in the luxury of being able to sit back and say, you know what? We can go with this guy. We could go with Laramie Tunsil. Would not be a bad pick at all. And if they decide to go with Jalen Ramsey, who, let's face it, with all the physicality and stuff, it could be. I know it hadn't been done in forever. I think since 1956 or so to take a DB like that. But if you think he could be an Ed Reed, Charles Woodson kind of guy,
wow.
Yeah. But they're sitting in the sweet spot. They're going to take a guy who fills a need if they stay at one. And that gives them a position of strength.
No question about it. We're talking with Teresa Walker of the Associated Press here on SportsLine. It's funny you mentioned Ben Jones. Interesting free agent pickup by the Tennessee Titans. What do you think this means for Brian Schwenke, a guy I know they like, but he hasn't been able to stay on the field?
Well, it means that he has to compete, They made it very clear. They see him at the center spot. And Brian, as good as he's been and as hard as he's worked, being healthy is just not something he's been able to do in his short career with the Titans. So, if he comes in and outplays him, well, that'll be, he can do that. You got to go out there and show that I'm the guy that deserves this job. It's just going to be kind of tough. And, hey, when we see them finally start in the lineup, they might decide to try him at guard and see what works better there. But, the good thing is this. You'll have Andy Gallick, who's played center, Schwenke, who's played center, and then you've got Jones, a position that's been a rotating kind of situation for him the last 2 years. They've got some people now to shore that up and create competition, which is never a bad thing.
What the heck? Bring back Fernando Velasco to boot. Why not? Yeah. NBA playoffs right around the corner. Teresa, if you could, bring us up to speed on where the Memphis Grizzlies are. I know they're dealing with some injuries. Marc Gasol, the West, as we say every year, is loaded. It's packed. I mean, the Warriors are running away with everything. San Antonio's right there. I think Oklahoma City is an underrated team that could make some noise in the playoffs. You still have the Clippers. Where are the Grizzlies right now as we get ready for the NBA postseason?
Well, right now they are fifth in the Western Conference. They've got a 2.5-game lead over Portland for the number 5 seed. And it's tough. I mean, right now they've lost 3 straight. Zach Randolph came back tonight after missing a couple games with a sprained ankle. And so he's back in, but they're trailing at the half to Denver. And it's not looking pretty. They're hoping that Mike Conley, the timeline they gave with the Achilles tendonitis was that maybe 3 to 4 weeks. That would put him maybe coming back just as the playoffs start. Well, if they're in the 5 seed, if they can stay at the 5 seed, they have to absolutely love the matchup they get because it would be the Clippers. And even with their depleted, banged-up 10-player or 10-day contract guys that they've got on the roster, last time they played the Clippers, they thumped them pretty good. So, that's a team that they know very, very well. And, and they've got so many former Clippers now. The saying in Memphis is if you can't beat them, come join the Grizzlies. So that would be a matchup I think they'd have to be ecstatic with. Now, if they split the 6, that would put them against the Thunder, and that could be a really, really tough matchup. So, but again, another team that they've played a ton in the postseason, and they know very well. And Tony Allen doesn't back down from anybody, so he'd be happy to go up against KD or Russell Westbrook.
You correctly predicted last year at this time that Marc Gasol would re-sign with the Grizzlies. What about Mike Conley Jr.? What do you think his future is? Do you see him back with Memphis, or does he go the free agent route this summer?
Well, considering that Marc Gasol and Mike Conley talked a lot and they're very close friends, got to think that they talked when Gasol signed his deal. But keep an eye on this. Mike Conley, love him to pieces. He's just a tough guy, but he's really had a hard time staying healthy this season, last season. It's been wrist, it's been ankle, it's been foot. Guy couldn't have been tougher coming back and playing in the postseason last year with a broken face.
Yeah.
But, do you worry about giving him anything close to a max deal, considering his injury issues? And that's going to be something that they have to think about very, very closely.
Well, I want to see him in orange and blue with my beloved but very bad New York Knicks. But anyway, that's another topic for another day. Teresa Walker, the Associated Press, love having you on. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
My pleasure, JB.
All right, the great Teresa Walker, kind enough to join us. All right, time for our first break. When we come back, it's time to talk WrestleMania 32. Our buddy Justin LaBar will break it all down for you. What can we expect from some of the big matches this Sunday in Dallas? We're going to get to that and your phone calls next. Stay with us.